Hello, welcome to Return to Life. Today, we will listen to a story about the cracks in life where people have felt weak, full of doubt, yet kept moving forward. If you are standing between exhaustion and hope, this story may be for you.
Late morning light slipped lazily through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the small Brooklyn apartment. Outside, the city murmured its usual sounds: horns, heels on pavement, the occasional bark from a restless dog. Inside, all was still, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the low tick of a kitchen clock. Alyssa stood in front of the mirror, her face inches from the glass. She lifted her bangs with one hand, narrowing her eyes at her reflection. Her forehead was a battlefield. Angry red bumps flared across the skin above her eyebrows, inflamed and stubborn, refusing to retreat despite her efforts. One near her hairline stood out, a swollen, throbbing pimple so deep it cast its own tiny shadow. She sighed. "It's just acne," she whispered to herself. "Who doesn't get acne?" She reached for her concealer, dabbing it with practiced fingers. It was part of her routine now: cover, blur, conceal, then go. There was no time for overthinking. Besides, she had meetings, reports, deadlines. But as she applied the makeup, her eyes lingered on the largest blemish again. It was different somehow, more painful, almost pulsing. Still, she didn't flinch. She'd been here before. Her phone buzzed beside the sink. Mom flashed on the screen. With a sigh, Alyssa tapped accept. Her mother's face filled the screen. Gentle lines etched across her cheeks, eyes always alert. "Sweetheart," her mother said, "you look tired. And, is that another breakout?" Alyssa rolled her eyes but forced a smile. "Morning to you too, Mom. You know I worry about you," her mother pressed gently. "Those breakouts keep showing up on your forehead. Maybe it's not just stress or makeup. Have you thought about—" "Mom, please," Alyssa cut in, tightening her ponytail. "It's fine. I've got a new serum coming. It'll clear up in a few days. You always say that. And it always works." Her mother frowned, but before she could say more, Alyssa tapped end call. She stood there for a moment, phone still in hand, her reflection unchanged. The bathroom light hummed above her, unforgiving in its brightness. From the hallway, Jade's voice floated in. "You good in there? I made ginger tea if you want some." Alyssa opened the door. Jade stood in the kitchen, wearing yoga pants and a calm, glowy expression that Alyssa found vaguely irritating. "I'm good," Alyssa replied quickly, brushing past her. Jade didn't press. She never did. It was hard living with someone so effortlessly balanced. Jade woke up at 6, drank smoothies with chia seeds, meditated before work. Somehow, she always had clear skin, even when she binged Netflix on weekends. Alyssa told herself it was just genetics. She threw on her blazer, grabbed her laptop bag, and checked her makeup one last time. The blemishes were still visible under the concealer, but she didn't care enough to fix them. Just acne. She locked the door behind her and stepped into the hallway, the chill of the elevator a small relief against her warm skin. Still, as she rode down, a question flickered through her mind, uninvited, uncomfortable. Why there? Why always on the forehead? She shook it off. There was no time for that. By the time Alyssa reached the office, her makeup had started to slip. The early fall humidity clung to her skin as she rushed through the glass doors of the marketing firm, adjusting her bag and brushing her bangs forward to hide her forehead. The elevator mirror offered a quick reflection. Even with concealer and powder, the inflammation was obvious. She shifted her gaze, pretending not to care. The truth was, she didn't have the energy to care. Not today. Her desk was already piled with papers and half-read emails. Her boss, Carl, waved as she walked by, mouthing something about client revision notes. She nodded, dropped into her chair, and opened her laptop. The day blurred: meetings, campaign edits, urgent Slack messages. By noon, she realized she hadn't eaten. Just coffee, sweet, milky, and the muffin she bought out of habit. Her stomach turned slightly, but she ignored it. That strange heaviness had become normal. Like the breakouts, like the late nights, around 2 p.m., she ducked into the restroom. The fluorescent lights made everything worse. She leaned over the sink and studied her face. The same inflamed patch, greasy T-zone, red streaks forming just above her brows. Maybe it was the sugar, or the cocktails, or the stress, or lack of sleep, or— "Stop, you don't have time to overthink." She rinsed her hands, took a deep breath, and left the restroom without looking back. At her desk, a coworker, Lena, dropped off a project brief. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, a little too gently. Alyssa forced a chuckle. "Yeah, just didn't sleep much. You know how it is." Lena hesitated, then left, but Alyssa knew how she looked, not just tired, drained. Her skin was dull, lips dry, eyes shadowed. She tapped a search into her phone, acne on forehead causes. The results loaded: liver overload, digestive imbalance, stress, poor sleep, high sugar diet. She blinked. The words swirled, something inside her stirred, an unease she couldn't name. She turned off the screen. It's just acne. But the idea lingered. What if it wasn't? What if this was something more? She remembered something her mom once said, years ago. Your body whispers long before it ever screams. It had sounded dramatic back then. Not anymore. Alyssa leaned back in her chair. She felt heavy, not tired in the usual way, but weighed down by something slow and quiet, like fog, something she had been carrying for a long time, and now it was showing up on her skin. She thought about Jade, about her green juices and warm lemon water in the morning, about sleeping before midnight, cooking at home, yoga. Alyssa had always dismissed those habits as boring, but maybe boring was better than whatever this was. She rubbed her temples. What if I've been treating the symptom, not the cause? It wasn't just the pimple anymore. It was the pattern, the cycle, the silence she kept giving her body. Somewhere deep inside, a voice she hadn't listened to in years began to speak. If you're listening to this and it sounds familiar, maybe you're where I was. Maybe you think it's just a skin issue. Maybe you're telling yourself what I did. Everyone gets acne. But ask yourself, how long has it been there? Are you tired in ways sleep doesn't fix? Do you feel bloated but keep ignoring it? Have your cravings replaced your hunger? If your answer is yes, then maybe this isn't just about skincare anymore. Maybe it's time to listen. The bar was already buzzing by the time Alyssa arrived. Neon lights flickered above polished countertops, and the bass thumped like a second heartbeat in the floor. People laughed too loudly, leaned too close, toasted too often. It was a scene she knew by heart. She slipped into the booth where her friends were already halfway through their second round. Shots lined the table, clear pink electric blue. Finally, someone cheered as Alyssa slid in. "We thought you ghosted." She forced a grin, tossing her bag beside her. "Just late. Work's been a mess. Then you deserve this." A shot glass was pressed into her hand. She didn't even ask what it was. She threw it back. It burned, but in the way she liked, blinding, numbing, hot. By the third round, her shoulders had dropped, the ache in her forehead faded, and her laughter was louder than she remembered it being all week. She danced between conversations, flirted lightly with a bartender she didn't plan to text back, and nodded along to stories she wouldn't remember. By 1 a.m., they moved to another spot, somewhere darker, louder. The lights were low and red, and the drinks came in tall glasses with sugar on the rim. Alyssa ordered hers extra sweet. It tasted like fruit punch and regret. She told herself she was having fun. She posted a selfie to her story. Angled high, filter on, hair perfectly swept to hide her forehead. The caption read, "Living my best life." But in the mirror above the bar, her eyes looked tired. No filter could blur that. When she stumbled into her apartment at nearly 3:30, the hallway light was off, but the kitchen smelled faintly of chamomile. Jade again, of course. Alyssa kicked off her heels, peeled off her blazer, and leaned against the fridge door. Her stomach twisted, not from the alcohol, but from something slower, deeper, an unease she'd gotten used to ignoring. She rummaged through the pantry and found instant ramen, salty, spicy, fast. She boiled water, slurped it down standing at the sink, then collapsed into bed without washing her face. She would regret that in the morning, but regret had become part of the routine. Sleep didn't come easy. Her head buzzed, her chest felt tight, and her thoughts scattered like broken glass. She tossed, turned, picked at her skin without realizing, scratched at the inflamed spot near her temple until it throbbed. By the time sleep took her, the sun was threatening to rise. She woke up at 10:45 a.m. Her mouth was dry, her head heavy. She blinked against the daylight creeping through the blinds. Jade was already gone. A note sat on the counter written in Jade's tidy handwriting. "Try drinking water today, not coffee. Your skin will thank you. Jay." Alyssa scoffed, then drank the coffee anyway. On her phone, messages from her team waited. A missed call from her mom. Another Instagram comment, "You're glowing, girl." She wanted to laugh. If only they could see her now, Her reflection in the toaster showed red, puffy skin and oily shine. The pimple from last night had grown angrier. It throbbed under the surface like a warning light. She had things to do, but she sat there for a moment, chewing a half-stale croissant, wondering, was this what normal had become? 3 nights a week like this. Ramen, wine, rushing through mornings, forgetting to eat, lying to her skin with makeup and stories with filters. She hadn't had a real meal in days. She hadn't truly rested in weeks. But most of all, she hadn't listened, not to herself, not to her body, not to the part of her whispering, "You are slowly burning out." By Tuesday, Alyssa's stomach was in open revolt. It started with a dull ache under her ribs. Then the bloating crept in, slow and stubborn, like someone had filled her belly with wet cement. No matter what she ate or didn't eat, there was pressure, a tightness that refused to release. Her favorite jeans dug in at the waist. Her once loose blouse felt 2 sizes smaller. She told herself it was water weight. Maybe hormones. Maybe she was just tired. Again. After her 3rd black coffee of the morning, her mouth felt sour. Not just dry, bitter, like something metallic lingering at the back of her tongue. She brushed her teeth twice. It didn't help. Lunch was a salad drenched in dressing she barely tasted, followed by an oat bar she chewed out of habit more than hunger. She noticed herself craving something salty, something spicy, something loud enough to distract her from the fatigue pooling behind her eyes. At 3 p.m., she bent over to pick up a pen and felt a sharp pressure on the right side of her abdomen. It was brief, but enough to make her flinch. "Gas," she muttered. "Has to be." Still, she Googled it. Right upper quadrant pain. The first few search results whispered things she didn't want to hear. Liver, gallbladder, bile ducts. She clicked out of the browser. Fast. It's just bad posture. Probably. That night, Alyssa scrolled through Instagram while waiting for her Thai takeout. Scrolling was easier than thinking. She tapped through story after story, people working out, posing with green juices, buying skincare with long scientific names and glass dropper bottles. Somewhere in the swirl of it all, a sponsored ad popped up. Clear your skin from within. Heal your gut, support your liver, and glow naturally. She rolled her eyes, then, without thinking, clicked the link. The article listed a dozen symptoms: persistent acne on the forehead, sugar cravings, late-night energy crashes, bitterness in the mouth, insomnia, bloating, sensitivity to alcohol. She paused. It was a checklist of her last 2 weeks. She closed the tab. Again, those wellness people always exaggerated. Everyone had a little bloating. Everyone had acne now and then. Everyone was tired. It didn't mean something was wrong. She opened the food delivery app and added an extra side of spicy wings. As she waited, she peeled back her hair to check the sore spot near her hairline. The pimple had grown, redder now. She pressed it, lightly, then harder. A pulse of pain shot through her scalp. She winced, then looked closer. The area around it seemed slightly swollen, warm to the touch, like it was inflamed from beneath, not just the surface. Still, she told herself, it would go away. Eventually. It always did. When the food arrived, the scent of garlic and chili hit her hard. She devoured it anyway. Pad Thai, deep-fried dumplings and the wings, ignoring the heaviness settling in her gut before she even finished chewing. An hour later, the familiar fog rolled in, not quite pain, not quite nausea, just a weighted dullness behind her ribs and a hot, restless feeling in her chest. She stood at the bathroom mirror, staring at herself through half-lidded eyes. The whites had dulled slightly. Her skin had that strange tone again, grayish under the makeup, too shiny across the T-zone. Like her body was leaking stress through her pores. She pulled her lower eyelid down. Red. That meant something, didn't it? She didn't know, and maybe she didn't want to. By the end of the week, Alyssa had stopped noticing the bloating. It was just there, like the background noise of the city, constant, dull, always humming beneath everything. She didn't remember when her appetite changed, or when her sleep started to feel less like rest and more like escape. It had all blurred together, late nights, early alarms, too much coffee, not enough water. She still laughed at work, still made her deadlines, still looked composed from the outside. But inside, she was tired in a way that didn't go away with naps or long weekends. It wasn't burnout, not exactly. It was something else, something slower. Like she was slowly unraveling one skipped meal at a time. The symptoms were still there. The forehead acne never left. The pulsing pimples took turns flaring and fading, never truly gone. The bitter taste in her mouth appeared most mornings, especially after late nights or anything fried, and always, the dull pressure in her upper abdomen. Not sharp enough to be scary, not gone enough to ignore. She started popping antacids, started skipping dinner entirely, told herself she was just managing her digestion. When Jade asked if she wanted to go to yoga Saturday morning, Alyssa declined with a smile. "I'm going to sleep in," she said, already knowing she wouldn't. That night she stayed up scrolling, watching random videos, cleaning hacks, dogs doing tricks, influencers unpacking morning routines full of serums and supplements. Her skin itched as she watched, but she didn't scratch. Her reflection on the screen looked fine. Fine was good enough. Fine meant not thinking too hard, not digging too deep, not asking questions she might not want answers to. She didn't want to be one of those people, always reading labels, drinking celery juice, saying no to fun. That wasn't her. She had a life. A fast, loud, messy, delicious life. And she didn't want to give that up just because her skin had a tantrum and her stomach occasionally misbehaved. So she did what she'd always done. She adjusted, ignored, pushed through. That Sunday, as she folded laundry, her phone buzzed again. Another DM from a wellness account she didn't remember following. Chronic fatigue isn't normal. Neither is bloating, skin inflammation, or waking up more tired than when you went to bed. Your body is not broken. It's overwhelmed, and it's trying to tell you. She stared at the screen for a long time, then swiped it away. Outside, someone slammed a car door. A siren wailed in the distance. The city moved on, uncaring. Alyssa pressed a palm against her forehead. She could feel the heat radiating beneath her skin, the new bump forming near her right brow, rising like a signal flare. It hurt, but not enough to stop her. She had learned to live with pain, tiny, predictable, manageable pain. It was just part of life now. Everyone had something, and hers just happened to be a face that wouldn't clear, a gut that wouldn't settle, and a liver she never thought twice about. She went back to folding towels. Alyssa was supposed to meet Nathan that evening. It wasn't a date. Not really, just coffee. Two people who used to mean something to each other, catching up after years of nothing. He'd messaged her out of the blue, saying he was back in the city, and she'd said yes before she thought too hard about it. But now, as the clock neared 5, she stared at her phone, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Her body ached, not dramatically. Not in any way that would concern a doctor, but in that subtle, bone-deep kind of tired. The kind that weighed down her eyelids and made her jaw feel tight. Her skin looked gray in the mirror. The same patch of inflammation near her temple was back again, slightly more swollen, slightly more painful, and the nausea. It wasn't strong, just enough to steal her appetite and make her shirt feel tight across her stomach. She typed, "Hey, I'm so sorry, something came up." "Rain check?" He replied a few minutes later. "No worries, feel better." She didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel much of anything. She microwaved leftover rice, pushed it around on her plate, and opened her laptop. A half-written campaign proposal blinked on the screen. She stared at it, not reading, just watching the cursor pulse like a heartbeat. Her body felt heavy again. That word kept coming back, heavy, not in weight, in presence, as if her body wasn't just existing beside her, it was trying to get her attention, slowly, repeatedly, gently at first, but with more urgency now. She thought back to the articles she'd skimmed, about how the liver works overnight, how staying up past midnight repeatedly can disrupt its detox cycle, how poor digestion and chronic bloating aren't just inconveniences, they're warning signs, how the skin, especially the forehead, can act like a messenger for what's going wrong underneath. But she didn't want to become obsessed. She didn't want to spiral into fear. That wasn't helpful either. So instead, she told herself, "I'll deal with it later," and maybe that was the most dangerous sentence she'd been repeating. Because the truth was, her body had already started adapting. The bloating wasn't occasional anymore. It was constant. Her sleep wasn't bad sometimes. It was never restful. The acne wasn't flare-ups. It was persistent. What used to feel like warning signs had become her new normal. This was what her body did now. It carried her through the day as best it could, while absorbing every insult she threw at it, the skipped meals, the drinks, the exhaustion, the denial. It had learned to function in dysfunction, and that was the scariest part. Not the acne, not the fatigue, not even the pain, but the fact that she'd gotten used to it all. The clinic smelled like eucalyptus and expensive denial. Alyssa lay back in the cushioned chair, eyes closed as the esthetician prepped her forehead with alcohol. The sting was familiar by now, so was the buzz of the small machine, the soft murmurs of spa music, and the low voice telling her to breathe deeply. It was her third peel in 6 weeks. The last 2 had brought some results. Brief, fleeting moments when her skin looked smoother under foundation, when the redness faded just enough to make her believe it was working. But then, it always came back, stronger, deeper, wider. This time, the esthetician recommended adding a light laser treatment. It'll help with the post-inflammatory pigmentation, she said gently. But you really need to focus on internal balance too. Diet, sleep. I know, Alyssa interrupted, smiling thinly. I'll get there. The woman didn't push. She'd probably heard that same line 100 times. As the light pulsed across her skin, Alyssa squeezed her hands into fists under the blanket. It wasn't pain. It was something else. A mix of hope and frustration, like trying to clean a mirror that kept fogging back up. After the session, she looked in the mirror and felt a flicker of relief. Her skin was flushed, but in that post-treatment glow sort of way. She looked renewed, alive, better. It wouldn't last, but right now, it was enough. She tapped her card, tipped generously, and left with a bag of aftercare serums and instructions to avoid sunlight. Outside, the city was cold. Her face stung in the wind. That night, she applied the healing balm in a soft circular motion, exactly as directed. She propped herself up on her pillows to avoid creasing her skin while she slept. She drank green tea instead of wine. She even added a few drops of chlorophyll to her water. For 2 days, her forehead looked calmer. On the third, a red spot began to bloom again. By the end of the week, the old cluster had returned, more inflamed than before, spreading toward her temples. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She opened her drawer, pulled out a tube of benzoyl peroxide and dabbed it on in silence. The fight had become routine. Spa, peel, serum, conceal, repeat. Every time a new breakout surfaced, she answered with products, not questions. She layered acids over irritation. She exfoliated angry skin. She treated inflammation with more inflammation. And the more she fought, the more her skin seemed to fight back. But the problem wasn't her skin. Not really. It was the war she waged without understanding the enemy. Deep down, she knew. These breakouts weren't random. They weren't because she skipped toner one night or didn't double cleanse. They were messages. Symptoms, flashing lights on a dashboard she refused to read. But admitting that meant changing things. Hard things. Things that didn't come in glass bottles or sleek packages. So instead, she told herself what she always did. I just haven't found the right routine yet. She started waking up with a strange taste in her mouth. Not morning breath. Not dryness. It was bitter, sharp, metallic, like she'd bitten into something spoiled and couldn't spit it out. She brushed her teeth twice, switched toothpaste brands, bought a fancy copper tongue scraper from an influencer's detox kit. Nothing helped. Then came the tightness. It crept up on her slowly, a subtle ache under her right rib, just enough to make her shift in her chair or favor one side when she sat. At first she thought it was muscle strain, from working late maybe. Then gas, then stress. It didn't go away. She pressed her fingers there sometimes, just above the waist, just below the ribs. The spot felt full, like something was swelling beneath the surface. Not pain exactly, but pressure, heavy, dull, and persistent. She added it to her mental list, along with the breakouts, the insomnia, the nausea that came and went, the fatigue that settled in her bones like winter fog. But she didn't slow down. If anything, she leaned in harder. She booked another spa appointment, this time for a more intensive detox facial. The esthetician suggested a lymphatic massage. It helps with drainage, she said. Drainage of what? Alyssa didn't ask. She bought a gua sha stone, iced her face twice a day, started tapping under her eyes every morning, as if waking up her skin could somehow wake up her body. She scrolled past articles about liver health, gut inflammation, hormonal imbalance. Instead, she clicked on a YouTube video titled, "How I Cleared My Acne in 5 Days Using This Miracle Toner." It didn't work, of course. But for 5 days, she believed it might. That was enough. She stopped looking at the big picture. Or maybe she never had. Her world had narrowed down to inches of skin on her forehead. Her worth condensed into pores and pigmentation. If she could just clear the canvas, everything underneath could stay hidden. There were moments, brief ones, when clarity tried to break through, like when she saw her reflection in the subway window, gray undertones beneath bronzer, eyes dull despite mascara, lips pale even under tinted balm, or when she realized she hadn't laughed, really laughed, in weeks. But then a friend would comment on her stories, "Your skin looks so good lately," and the illusion stitched itself back together. She clung to those comments like life rafts. Maybe they didn't see the inflammation, maybe they didn't see the fatigue, maybe she could still pass as fine. And if she could pass, then maybe nothing was really wrong. Right? Right. So she kept covering, kept masking, kept pretending that treating symptoms was the same as solving problems. Even as her skin thinned, even as her body dimmed, even as her reflection became something distant, something not quite hers, because the truth was simple. She didn't want to change. She wanted to win. She wanted to outsmart the signals, outspeed the damage, outpurchase the warning signs, and maybe for a while she thought she could, but her body, it had been speaking for months. She just wasn't listening. It started with the heat, not outside. Inside, a low, simmering warmth under her skin, like her blood had shifted a few degrees upward and no one had told her. It wasn't fever. Her forehead didn't burn to the touch, but something within her pulsed warmer than it used to. At night, her sheets clung to her skin. In meetings, sweat pooled at the base of her spine. Even when the AC blasted cold air, her coworkers noticed. "You okay?" someone asked during a brainstorming session, glancing at the slight sheen across her temples. "I'm fine," she lied, blotting with a tissue. "Just warm in here." But it wasn't the room. It was her. Mornings were harder now. Alyssa no longer woke up groggy. She woke up exhausted. No matter how many hours she slept, which were fewer than ever, her limbs felt thick, her head cloudy, her eyes unfocused. Her coffee didn't hit like it used to. She doubled her dose, then tripled. Still, the fog lingered. Her digestion followed suit. The bloating became more aggressive, rising like a balloon the second she ate anything heavier than broth. Even salad made her feel full and sluggish. Spicy food, once a comfort, now brought sharp stomach pangs within minutes. Her hunger disappeared, replaced by a dull nausea that hovered all day. And the pimple near her hairline, it never left. Sometimes it flared red and angry. Other times it just sat there, swollen and stubborn, like a sentinel guarding a deeper problem. She tried leaving it alone. She tried medicating it. She tried ignoring it. It didn't care. At night, Alyssa found herself lying awake, eyes open in the dark, counting the seconds between heartbeats. Sleep no longer welcomed her. She was tired, always, but sleep came late, shallow, and restless. She'd doze off only to wake up hours later, mind racing, body heavy, air thick. Some nights she turned her pillow over and over, trying to find a cold spot. Other nights she paced. The worst part was the silence. No one knew. Not really. Her friends still saw the filtered photos, the quick replies in group chats. Her coworkers still received polished presentations. Jade was around less, busy with a new job, a new life rhythm, and Alyssa didn't reach out. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what to say. "Hey, I think something's wrong with me, but it's not bad enough to prove." So instead she stayed quiet, even as her body began to whisper less and demand more. Her right side hurt more often now. The tightness under her ribs became a dull ache that flared when she laughed too hard, or twisted too fast, or ate anything fried. She Googled pain under right rib again. Read the same answers: liver, gallbladder, digestive inflammation. She didn't click the links this time. She knew what they would say, and knowing meant doing something, and doing something meant admitting it was real. So she pressed her hand against her side, took a breath and said, "It's nothing, just tired. I've been pushing too hard." Then she poured another coffee and opened her laptop. One night, the pressure under her ribs turned sharp. It came without warning. Just a sudden, breath-snatching jab beneath her right side as she bent to tie her shoes. She froze, waited, breathed slowly through her nose until it passed. It did. But the echo of it lingered, like a bruise that hadn't formed yet. She didn't tell anyone. Instead, she booked a stronger peel. "If I'm breaking out," she told herself, "I might as well burn it all off." The esthetician warned her. "This one's a bit intense. You might experience more flaking, more redness, especially if your skin barrier is compromised." Alyssa nodded, already halfway checked out. She didn't care about the barrier. She wanted results. That night, her face throbbed, not just heat from the treatment, but from something deeper, like her skin was trying to push something out, and failing. Her reflection looked raw. Her body felt the same. She couldn't sleep. Again, her chest buzzed like a loose wire. No matter how many positions she tried, she couldn't get comfortable. Her pillow felt too warm. Her breath too shallow. Her heart pounded louder than it should have. By 3 a.m. she sat up in bed, pressing her fingers into her temples, whispering, "What is wrong with me?" No answer, just the hum of her apartment. The city beyond the window. Her own pulse too fast, too loud. She got up and walked to the fridge, stared at it, closed it again, took 2 sips of water, scrolled through her phone, opened and closed 3 apps without reading a word. Her brain was full, but empty, wired but slow. The next morning she woke up late and panicked. Her eyes were red, her skin gray. Her tran was shiny with oil before she even left the house. Her breath was dry. Her stomach refused food. Her body felt foreign. She scrubbed harder. With her cleanser, with her thoughts, with caffeine. She put on more makeup than usual. She wore perfume that stung. She smiled harder in the elevator mirror. She drowned out the symptoms with distractions. Loud music in her earbuds, a second shot of espresso, a to-do list that stretched past midnight. Anything to keep moving, anything not to feel. But the feeling crept in anyway. The strange sense that she was borrowing her own body, like it belonged to someone else now, and she was just the tenant overstaying her lease. By mid-afternoon, her vision blurred for a second. Just one blink too long. She rubbed her eyes and shook it off. Just tired. Everything was just tired now. And then came the dream. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. She was lying down, floating maybe. There was no floor beneath her, no ceiling above. Just a voice, not angry, not loud, just calm. Patient. "I've been trying to tell you," it said. "You're not listening." She woke up with her hands clenched and her heart racing. Later that day, as she reapplied concealer in the office bathroom, she saw it again. The same pimple, deep and unmovable, now joined by a new one just beside it, like twin warnings blooming under her skin. She looked at herself, really looked, and whispered, "This can't be normal." The words came out softer than she meant, almost like a confession. And then, as if something within her cracked just slightly, another truth slipped through the space between her thoughts. Your body doesn't scream, it whispers. And when you keep ignoring it, it starts to break. She missed her alarm. It wasn't the first time, but this time felt different. Her body didn't stir when the sound blared. It wasn't until her second phone buzzed, a calendar alert, that she blinked awake, disoriented and drenched in sweat. Her sheets were soaked, her shirt clung to her back, her mouth tasted metallic again, sharper than before. She sat up too fast and the room spun. For a second she thought she might throw up, or pass out, or both. She clutched the edge of the bed, eyes closed, willing the dizziness to pass. Her skin felt hot and clammy, but her fingertips were cold. She reached for her water bottle, on the nightstand, and knocked it over. That small sound, plastic clattering to the floor, echoed too loudly in the silence. She winced. Everything felt too loud lately. The lights, the notifications, even her own thoughts, especially her thoughts. After a minute, she got up, dragging herself to the bathroom. Her reflection was worse than usual, not tired, wrecked. Her face was colorless except for the angry flush on her forehead. Her lips looked dry. Her eyes were puffy, not from sleep but from something deeper, like her body had been crying in her sleep. She rinsed her face, carefully patting around the fresh breakout now forming near her temple. It hurt just to touch. She could feel it, beneath the skin. Swollen, deep, alive, another one, another message. She ignored it. She dressed in silence, skipped breakfast and Ubered to work, too late and too dizzy to deal with the subway. Her boss raised an eyebrow when she walked in. She smiled, said "crazy morning," and sat down like her body wasn't trying to give out beneath her. At her desk, everything blurred. The screen, the words, even her own hands. She typed, deleted, typed again. Nothing stuck. By 11 a.m., she had already opened and closed the same email 5 times. She tried to stand and nearly lost her balance. Low blood sugar, she told herself. She reached for the granola bar in her bag, but her hands were trembling. She tore the wrapper slowly, forced a bite, and chewed like it was cardboard. Everything tasted wrong. By noon, she told her manager she needed to leave early. Migraine, she said. He didn't argue. She went home and crawled into bed fully clothed. No music, no lights, just darkness and the overwhelming urge to disappear. Her body wasn't whispering anymore. It was pulsing, demanding, breaking rhythm in ways she couldn't ignore. That night, as she lay in the half-silence between nausea and sleep, Alyssa tried to catalog the list of things that had changed. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't digest. She couldn't focus. Her skin was worse than ever. Her energy came in brief, manic flashes, then crashed hard. And somehow, despite all the facials, all the pills, all the promises, she was worse, not better. And yet, even as her body shut down systems one by one, Alyssa still looked for the next serum, still searched for a product that could fix what she refused to face, because to face it meant asking harder questions, and she wasn't ready for the answers. Not yet, but her body, it was done waiting. The night didn't start out any different, just another birthday gathering, another rooftop bar, another excuse to dress up, drink down, and pretend everything was fine. Alyssa wore black, sleek, fitted, forgiving. She swiped on foundation thick enough to mask the swelling near her temple, concealer for the gray under her eyes, bronzer to fake life, red lipstick to distract. She looked stunning. Everyone said so. No one saw the tremble in her fingers. No one noticed how carefully she moved, as if her body had forgotten how to carry itself. The first drink hit harder than expected, a strawberry margarita, extra sweet. Her stomach twisted halfway through, but she laughed it off. Said something about empty stomach, even though she hadn't eaten more than crackers all day. She didn't want food, just numbness. By the second drink, her cheeks were flushed, but not from joy. The heat under her skin wasn't excitement. It was the same warmth that had been haunting her for weeks, now amplified by sugar and liquor. Her breath felt shallow, her head light, the music too loud, the laughter too sharp. Still, she smiled. She danced. She drank again, a shot of tequila, then another. Because if she didn't keep going, she'd have to stop, and if she stopped, she might feel it all. By 11 p.m., her vision blurred at the edges. The rooftop lights stretched too long. The air smelled like smoke and citrus, and something sickly sweet she couldn't place. Her friends were taking selfies. Someone handed her a glass of something pink and sparkling. She took it, sipped. Her stomach churned instantly. The bitterness in her mouth returned, sharper than ever. She swallowed it down with the rest. She told herself she just needed air, but as she made her way toward the stairs, the world tilted, just slightly, just enough to make her grip the railing. Her heart thudded, loud and uneven. A pulse pounded in her forehead. That same spot near her hairline, the one that had been inflamed for weeks, now felt hot to the touch, like it was ready to burst. Her mouth tasted like metal. Her skin burned. She leaned over the side of the railing and retched. Nothing came up, just acid and saliva. Her legs trembled beneath her. Someone called her name. She turned. Then everything went sideways. The ground wasn't there. The sky was spinning. And Alyssa collapsed, not dramatically, not like in the movies, just a slow, quiet fall, like a body too tired to keep pretending. The first thing she noticed was the light. White. Sterile. Unforgiving. It hummed above her like a cold sun, too bright and too still. Her eyelids fluttered. Her mouth was dry. The air tasted like chemicals and cotton. A low beeping echoed in the distance. Steady, robotic. Somewhere nearby, footsteps clicked across tile. Voices murmured. A machine hissed. She blinked slowly, the ceiling coming into focus in painful inches. Where am I? Then hospital. The thought landed with a weight she couldn't explain. Her arms felt heavy. An 4 was taped to the crook of her elbow, a blood pressure cuff around her bicep, a monitor clipped to her finger, her body tethered to machines like a warning. She tried to sit up. A rush of dizziness pinned her back. Easy, a voice said gently. You fainted. You're in the ER. A nurse, late 30s, calm eyes. Her voice was soft but practiced, the kind used for patients too dazed to panic. You were brought in last night, she continued. You collapsed. Your friends said you'd been drinking. Alyssa opened her mouth to speak, but her throat burned. Water. The nurse offered a small cup with a straw. Alyssa sipped. The coolness hit her teeth like ice. She winced. We ran some tests, the nurse added. The doctor will explain everything, but you need to rest. Rest, that word again. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, it was hours later, or maybe minutes. A new face stood beside her now. White coat, clipboard, kind but tired eyes. Ms. Hart, he began. I'm Dr. Levin. I'm the attending on your case. She nodded, or thought she did. You came in with acute dehydration, elevated heart rate, and loss of consciousness, he said. Your blood work showed a bacterial infection in your bloodstream, likely stemming from a localized skin infection. She frowned. Skin? She croaked. He pointed to her forehead. She reached up slowly and touched the area above her temple. It throbbed, swollen, warm, bandaged. The lesion was open, he explained. Possibly exposed to bacteria during the evening. Combined with compromised immunity and fatigue, it led to sepsis risk. Sepsis. The word hung in the air like smoke. I'm okay? She asked, barely audible. For now, he said gently. We caught it early. You're on 4 antibiotics. But, he flipped the chart, paused. Your liver enzymes are elevated, significantly. We reviewed your past labs. There's a pattern. It suggests long-term hepatic strain, possibly early-stage fibrosis. Alyssa stared at him. The words didn't land right away. Liver, strain, fibrosis. I don't drink that much, she whispered. He looked at her, not accusing, just steady. It's not just alcohol, he said. Lack of sleep, processed food, stress, over-the-counter meds. When your body is in constant defense mode, something pays the price. She looked away. The white wall, the 4-bag, her chipped nail polish. What does this mean? It means, he said carefully, your body has been waving red flags for a long time. Last night was the moment it forced you to stop. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply laid there, feeling the weight of every missed signal pressing down on her chest. And for the first time, truly, deeply, she was afraid. She lay there long after the doctor left. The machines kept working. The Ford dripped steadily. The monitor beeped with an indifferent rhythm, counting her breaths, her pulse, her presence, alive. But something inside her had collapsed. Her forehead throbbed beneath the bandage, a deep, pulsing ache that radiated backward into her skull. Each beat felt like an accusation, not sharp, not sudden, just constant, relentless. She closed her eyes, and the images came anyway. Her reflection in the mirror weeks ago, the concealer, the filters, the way she'd pressed that inflamed skin without thinking, without fear, without respect, the nights she'd stayed out drinking when her body begged for rest. The mornings she'd ignored the bitterness in her mouth, the heaviness under her ribs, the exhaustion that sleep never fixed, the quiet warnings, the whispers. She had stepped over them all. Now her body had dragged her here. A nurse returned to check her vitals. Alyssa watched the woman's hands move efficiently, gently, as if this broken state was just another task on a long list. Do you need anything? The nurse asked. Alyssa shook her head. What she needed didn't come in a cup or through a tube. When the room was quiet again, she turned her head slightly and caught her reflection in the darkened window. Pale, hollow, a stranger wearing her face. She tried to remember the last time she felt truly well. Not functional, not fine, well. The answer frightened her. She couldn't remember. A sharp nausea rose in her throat. This time it wasn't from alcohol or acid. It was something heavier. Something like grief. Grief for the body she'd abused. Grief for the signals she'd mocked. Grief for the illusion of control she'd clung to while everything quietly unraveled. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Jade, I'm here. Take your time. Alyssa stared at the message until her vision blurred. She hadn't even told Jade what happened. Jade already knew it was serious. Everyone else had known before she did. Tears slid down the sides of her face, silent and hot, soaking into the pillow. Her chest tightened, not in panic, but in recognition. This was real. This wasn't stress. This wasn't bad skin. This wasn't a phase she could exfoliate away. Her body had crossed a line, and it had dragged her with it. Later, another doctor came in to explain the scans. He spoke calmly, carefully, like someone walking through a minefield. There's damage, he said. Not new, not sudden. This didn't happen overnight. He paused, letting the words sink in. This has been building for years, years. Alyssa swallowed. She thought of every time she'd said, I'll deal with it later. Every time she'd chosen numbness over rest. Appearance over health. Control over listening. Later had arrived, and it looked like this, a hospital bed, a bandaged forehead, and 4 delivering antibiotics to fight an infection that started from something she'd called just a pimple. She turned her head away from the doctor, staring at the blank wall as he continued explaining treatment plans, follow-ups, lifestyle changes. The phrase sounded distant, abstract, but one sentence cut through everything else, sharp and unmistakable. If this continues, the doctor said, the damage will progress, and some of it can't be undone. Something inside her broke then. Not loudly, not violently, just a quiet collapse of denial. She had crossed the point where pretending was an option. When the room finally emptied again, Alyssa lay still, listening to her own breathing. Each inhale felt earned, each exhale felt fragile. Her forehead throbbed again, deep and insistent. She lifted her hand, hovering just above the bandage this time. She didn't touch it. For the first time, she didn't fight it. She let the pain be what it was, a message, and in the silence of that sterile room, with her body tethered to machines and the truth finally unavoidable, Alyssa whispered, hoarse, trembling and devastatingly clear. It wasn't just a pimple. She swallowed hard. It was a warning that I turned into a scar. The days blurred. Hospital rooms have a way of bending time. The walls didn't change, but her perception of them did. One morning bled into the next, marked only by the shift of nurses and the click of her 4-pump. She stopped checking the clock. What did it matter? Her body had taken over now, dictating everything. When to sleep, when to wake, when to ache. She had no appetite. The doctors said that was normal, for now. Her blood work was stabilizing, but her liver function remained concerning. That was the word they kept using, not dramatic, just concerning. Like a red light blinking in the background of her life, she sat in silence most of the time. No scrolling, no emails, no noise, just her, and the beeping, and the thoughts she couldn't run from anymore. She remembered the first time the pimple appeared. It wasn't that big, just a tiny red bump near her hairline. She hadn't even cared, not really. She remembered looking in the mirror, frowning slightly, then reaching for a concealer. That's all it was. A dot, a mark, a blemish, a nothing. She'd covered it. She'd moved on. Now here she was, 3 months later, staring down blood infections and the possibility of liver damage from a blemish she hadn't bothered to understand. And not just the blemish, everything that led to it, the late nights, the skipped meals, the cheap drinks, the cheap fixes. She remembered how often she'd laughed off the symptoms, how she'd glamorized her own exhaustion. I thrive under pressure, she used to say. Sleep is for the weak, coffee is my blood type. It was cute then. It was funny. Now it was a cautionary tale. She replayed the moments in reverse. Each spa treatment, each shot of tequila, each new product she'd bought because someone online said it would change her skin forever. She'd changed it all right. She had inflamed it, peeled it, bruised it, infected it. And all the while, her body had whispered, with the bitter taste in her mouth, with the tightness in her right side, with the bloating, the insomnia, the dizzy spells. She'd called them minor inconveniences. She'd called them manageable. She'd called them normal. They weren't. They were alarms. And she had cut the wires. Now she lay in a hospital bed, bandaged, bruised, barely functioning, with more medical paperwork in her file than she'd ever imagined. She pressed her fingers gently against the edge of the bandage on her forehead. It didn't hurt as much now. Not on the outside, anyway. The swelling had gone down. The skin was healing. But something deeper was still raw. She remembered the exact moment the pimple burst, that burning sting near her hairline, right before the world went black. She remembered feeling like something had cracked open, not just on her skin, but in her, like her body had made one last desperate plea, look at me, listen, please. And she hadn't, she'd collapsed instead. She blinked, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them out like penance. One for every night she skipped rest. One for every meal replaced with caffeine. One for every warning she shrugged off. Her body had been loyal, so painfully loyal, it had carried her through all the self-neglect. It had kept showing up for her, even when she didn't return the favor. It had whispered, pleaded, begged, and when all else failed, it had screamed, not out of anger, out of survival, because it still wanted her to live. She felt something tighten in her throat. Not panic, not fear. Regret. That deep, sharp regret that comes only when you know, too late, that you had all the signs and you chose to look away. She turned her head to the window, watching the daylight soften across the blinds, and for the first time, in a long time, she whispered not a justification, but an apology. I'm sorry. A few days later, she was allowed to shower. It felt strange, standing upright, alone, without machines tethered to her limbs. The water was warm, too warm at first, and her skin flinched from it. She adjusted the dial, slower, more careful. Steam fogged the mirror in front of her. Still, her eyes found their way through it. There she was, Alyssa, barefaced, bandaged, paler than she remembered. The swelling on her forehead had gone down, but the mark remained. Dark, raw, healing. She stepped closer to the mirror, towel around her shoulders, hair damp and clinging to her neck. Her fingers hovered near the edge of the wound. This time she didn't touch it. She just looked, really looked, not with criticism, not with urgency, but with something that felt almost like reverence. She thought about all the mirrors she had stood in front of before. Bathroom mirrors, elevator mirrors, dressing room mirrors. She'd never really seen herself in any of them. Only the imperfections, the flaws, the things she needed to fix, the war zones, and her fingers. God, her fingers. They had been soldiers, picking, squeezing, punishing. Every blemish was an enemy, every bump a battle. She remembered the dozens of times she had pressed her thumbs into inflamed skin, watching white pus rise like victory. She remembered the sting, the blood, the satisfaction. Not once had she asked why. Why was it there? Why was it showing up in the same place? Why was her body trying so hard to speak? She hadn't asked. She had silenced, and now her skin had spoken loud enough to land her in a hospital bed. She leaned closer to the mirror, eyes scanning the rest of her face, the uneven tone, the slight puffiness beneath her eyes, the dullness in her cheeks. All of it made sense now. Her skin hadn't betrayed her. It had tried to protect her, tried to warn her. It was never the enemy. She was the one who turned it into one. She exhaled slowly, resting her hand lightly over her heart. Not dramatic, not posed. Just a quiet gesture of grounding, of being in her body, not against it. "I hear you now," she whispered, and she meant it. Back in the hospital room, she opened her notes app, typed something, deleted it, then typed again. She didn't know what she was writing yet, but it wasn't for anyone else. It was for her, a record of what the mirror didn't show, what the camera never caught, the silent unraveling, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of the mending. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the room filled with amber light, Alyssa sat upright in bed, drinking water slowly. Not from obligation, from instinct. Her body wanted hydration, and she wanted to give it. She thought of the pimple again, the original one, the one near her hairline. She'd hated it, cursed it, called it ugly, tried to erase it, and in doing so she'd missed what it was, a flare. A flare shot from inside the fortress saying, "We're under siege, we can't take much more." It wasn't just a cosmetic issue, it was a final attempt, a last signal, a body begging to be rescued by its own inhabitant. And instead of answering, she'd waged war. Now she sat in the silence that followed, not empty, not defeated, but still, listening, learning, rebuilding trust with the only home she would ever truly have. "I used to think I was just unlucky, that some people got clear skin and some didn't, that mine was simply bad genes or hormones or maybe just stress. It made me feel better to believe that. Because if it was genetics, if it was random, then none of it was really my fault, but I know better now, and I can't lie to myself anymore. The truth is, I did this, not on purpose. Never with cruelty, but through ignorance, through pride, through silence. I spent years looking at my body like it was a machine, one that I could push harder, polish better, override when it misbehaved. If I was tired, I drank more coffee. If I broke out, I booked a stronger peel. If I felt bloated, I skipped meals. If I couldn't sleep, I scrolled until I passed out. I didn't ask what my body needed. I told it what to do, and when it didn't obey, I punished it, quietly, consistently, with more products, more layers, more pressure. No one ever noticed. Because I looked fine, because I smiled in pictures, because I got the work done, because I had makeup for the breakouts, and filters for the days I couldn't hide them. I was what people called high functioning. But high functioning doesn't mean healthy. It means you're breaking down in private, and that's exactly what I did. Every time I ignored the bitterness in my mouth. Every time I laughed off the pain under my ribs. Every time I picked at a pimple without asking why it was there. I wasn't just mistreating my skin. I was ignoring a voice. The only voice that truly mattered. My own body's. It had been whispering for years, I'd just been too busy, or maybe too scared, to listen. And I want to be honest about something else. Not once during this entire ordeal did I blame the spa, or the products, or the ads I saw online. I don't blame anyone, because deep down I knew I wasn't sleeping enough. I knew I was drinking too much. I knew I was feeding my anxiety, not my body. But I kept telling myself I could fix it all later. When things calmed down, when work slowed, when life gave me a break, I thought I had time. Until I didn't, until I collapsed, until I woke up in a hospital bed, blinking under fluorescent lights, wondering how a simple breakout had landed me there. And the worst part? It wasn't a surprise. Not really. It was the inevitable result of 1,000 tiny choices I made to ignore myself. So no, this isn't a horror story about skincare gone wrong. This is a confession of how I stopped listening to the one voice I should have trusted most, my own. I keep replaying one sentence in my head. Not something a doctor said, not something I read online, just a quiet thought that comes back when everything else goes silent. If only I hadn't looked at that pimple through a purely cosmetic lens, if only I hadn't treated it like a flaw to erase, like an inconvenience to hide, like something standing between me and the version of myself I wanted the world to see. Because that pimple wasn't trying to ruin my face, it was trying to save my body. It was the last visible sign of something breaking quietly inside me, before the damage went deeper, before the consequences turned irreversible. I didn't see that then. All I saw was how it made me look. And that's the part that hurts the most. Not the hospital bed, not the 4S, not even the diagnosis, but the realization that I trained myself to value appearance over awareness. I believed that as long as I looked fine, I was fine. I believed that productivity meant health, that pushing through exhaustion was strength, that ignoring discomfort was discipline. No one ever taught me how wrong that was, but no one stopped me either. And in the end, the responsibility was mine. I don't share this because I want sympathy. I share it because I don't want anyone else to make the same mistake, thinking that the body is something to control instead of something to listen to. Your body doesn't sabotage you. It doesn't betray you. It doesn't suddenly collapse without warning. It warns you quietly, over and over, through fatigue you can't explain, through skin that won't heal, through digestion that feels off, through sleep that never restores you, through signals small enough to ignore until they aren't. I ignored mine because I thought I was too busy to stop, because I thought I could outwork the damage, because I thought there would always be time to fix it later. There wasn't, and I won't pretend I've learned everything now. I'm still healing, still adjusting, still learning how to ask my body questions instead of giving it orders, but I know this much for certain. That pimple wasn't my enemy. It was my final messenger. And I silenced it the only way I knew how, by covering it up, pressing it down, refusing to listen. If I could speak to the version of myself standing in front of the mirror that morning, annoyed and dismissive, I wouldn't tell her to buy a different product. I wouldn't tell her to change her routine. I would tell her this: stop, pause, ask why. Not everything that looks small is harmless. Not everything that looks cosmetic is superficial. Sometimes the body chooses the only language it knows you'll notice. And sometimes that language is written on your skin. So if there's one thing I want you to remember from my story, just one, it's this: listen sooner. Before the whisper becomes a collapse, before the warning becomes a diagnosis, before your body is forced to do something drastic just to be heard. Because once it reaches that point, you don't get to pretend anymore. If you're still listening to this, maybe you've been there too. Standing in front of the mirror, frustrated at your skin, staring at a breakout that won't go away, telling yourself it's just stress, just hormones, just bad luck. And maybe, like me, you've learned how to hide it, with concealer, with filters, with a nervous laugh when someone asks, "Rough night?" Maybe your forehead breaks out often. Maybe you call it just cosmetic. Maybe you don't think it matters, but let me ask you something. What if it does? What if your body has been speaking to you all along, and you've just been too busy, too tired, too distracted to listen? Let's walk through something together. Who is this for? It's for you. If you're waking up every day feeling exhausted, bloated, irritable, and you've convinced yourself that's just normal, it's for you. If you've had recurring forehead acne, but your response has always been to treat the surface, and not the system. Where are you in the journey? You might still be in the early stage, the manageable stage, the phase where a little concealer still hides the signs, where caffeine still covers the fatigue, where you still think you're in control. What are you getting wrong? You're assuming your skin is the problem. You're assuming your body is failing you, when in fact, it's trying to warn you. What happens if you ignore it? If you keep pushing, keep dismissing, keep numbing the signs, there's a cost. For me, it was a hospital bed. An infection that started from one inflamed pore, a diagnosis that showed my liver had been quietly breaking down for years. So when should you take this seriously? Now. Not when it's painful. Not when it's bleeding. Not when it's infected. But when it's whispering. When your skin starts changing in ways that don't make sense. When your digestion is off, your sleep is broken, your energy unpredictable. That's not bad luck. That's communication. And what can you do in the next 24 to 72 hours that actually matters? Here's a start. Drink water like your life depends on it. Because it does. Sleep before midnight. Every hour before 12 is worth 2 after. Eat real food. Your liver doesn't need another latte. It needs nutrients. Write down everything your body is feeling, even if it feels small. Stop buying products before asking, what is my body actually asking for? And most importantly, pause. Look in the mirror, not to judge but to listen. Ask, what's this trying to tell me? Because the truth is, your skin is not the enemy. Your body is not the problem. They are the messengers. The ones that show up for you when your mind is too loud to hear the deeper signals. And if you silence them, with makeup, with denial, with distraction, they will find other ways to reach you. Louder ways. Harder ways. Scarier ways. I hope you don't wait as long as I did. I hope you learn from my mistake, not from your own emergency. Because here's the truth no one told me. Your body always speaks before it breaks. The only question is, will you listen, or will you wait until it's too late?
Thank you for staying until the end with Return to Life. If you found a sense of connection or a small spark of hope, carry it with you as you return to everyday life. We look forward to seeing you in the stories ahead.